So I just want to thank the Chief Rabbi for making the time to speak to the Phyllis Jowell College teachers and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Rabbi Ziegler, and welcome everybody. It's so nice that you've made the journey up to Joburg, and thank you for coming by here. You know, Rabbi Ziegler, for reaching out. I'm such a huge fan of what your school is doing, of what Phyllis Jowell School is doing. I mean, I was there when it was started in its infancy. I remember it, you know, as like a baby, sort of just in nappies, and now it's a fully grown child. It's really thriving, which is so important. It's so important for for the Cape Town Jewish community that Phyllis Jowell School continues to thrive in the way that it does, and ultimately, what makes it part of what makes it so special is the incredible standard of the Torah learning at the school, that's thanks to all of you as the teaching staff of the Kodesh department, and also what I've noticed in the school, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're going to, and that is there's a tremendous spirit in the school. The kids are happy. And I think that's so important. It's one of the points I wanted to discuss with you today, this concept that, you know, teaching Torah is not just tools and skills. It also is about a love for it. And that love comes when you're happy and you have a sense of joy in it. And it's not something which is heavy and imposing, even though there's a lot to do and a lot to learn and mitzvahs, there's like responsibility. But yet to carry that lightly and with joy. And I think you guys have got that balance right. And when I walk into Phyllis Jowell, it's a happy place. I can see by your nodding heads that resonates. But okay, great. So what I thought to discuss today, and I really want to make it a conversation, not just one way, is to start by paying tribute to each one of you and by extension to all of the teachers in our schools who are teaching Torah to the new generation of South African Jews, because it is actually the lifeblood of our community. And I think one of the distinguishing things of the South African Jewish community is the high percentage of Jewish children who attend Jewish day schools. I think it's almost unprecedented around the world. I don't know what the exact statistics are, but it's somewhere way above 85%, which is unheard of globally. I think the Mexican Jewish community has got similar kind of stats, but in diaspora communities outside of South Africa and Mexico, I don't think you get those kind of proportions. And to me, and I'm saying this sort of with perspective as Chief Rabbi, when I look at the community, the high percentage of enrollment of our children in Jewish day schools, that to me is the most important guarantee for a vibrant Jewish future. And I think that in that respect, Jewish education in South Africa is thriving, and it has to thrive, because that's the lifeblood of our community. And that if that is so, then you guys as the teachers, the Kodesh teachers, the Torah teachers, are in fact on the front lines of our community, playing the most important role, and I think one can say the most important role, because there's a Gemara which I quoted at that incredible concert for the Siyum with Yonatan Razel in Cape Town at the Garden Shul. So it was just so lovely. It was like that first opportunity to sort of come out and celebrate as the pandemic was lifting, which I think we expedited its lifting at that concert, if we're honest. But it was such fun, and it was so lovely. And the thing that I mentioned to the kids then, I don't know if you remember, was this Gemara that says that if the Mashiach comes and he's rebuilding, and he's coming to rebuild, not if, but when the Mashiach comes, and he's please God he comes today, and when that happens, and he's rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, and then he needs people to come and help him, and he wants to close the schools to get the children to come and help. So the Gemara says you don't close schools for that, because the world exists for Hevel Piyam Shel Tinokas Shel Beis Rabban, for the breath of young children learning Torah. It says the whole world exists for that, and I think that means it means on a spiritual level, Hashem is Mechadish B'tuva B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereishis, that Hashem renews creation every day. And if for one moment Hashem would withdraw his energy, there'd be nothing in the universe. So there is a spiritual energy, and then the world exists because of that spiritual energy in the world, and it needs merit in order to do so. And the merit is Torah learning, and specifically the Torah learning of young children. But I think it's beyond. It's not only on the spiritual level, but also on a social level. That and that's why I'm linking it to what you were saying about the South African Jewish community. The Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, cannot survive without our children learning Torah. It cannot be. There is no future, because it's something which hit me very forcibly a while ago. I can't remember when, but just at this moment of thinking the following is that every generation we almost start at scratch, because we assume, okay, there's been a Jewish people, we've been around since Avraham Avinu was more than 3,800 years ago. Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, was more than 3,300 years ago. So we kind of think we've been around for thousands of years, and we're just going to keep on going for thousands of years more. But every generation you start again, because you have to transfer the entire system of the Torah from one generation to the next. And if we don't do that, it will stop. It will literally stop. There's no guarantee. The only guarantee is Jewish parents and Jewish schools. That's the only guarantee. It's like a thin line that lies between the past and a future that doesn't exist. It can't exist if we don't hand it over. And so I think and that's what it means that the world exists for the breath of young children learning Torah. It's the spiritual merit of it, that Hashem created his world so that there would be Torah in it, and if there's not going to be Torah, the world doesn't. The universe cannot justify its existence. But then it's on a social level, there will be no Am Yisrael, there will be no Jewish people, there will be no future unless it's handed on. And we actually have to hand it on every generation, because when a baby's born, baby knows nothing, doesn't know anything. It can't talk, it can't, nothing. So all of that information has to be given over. And if it's not, then it stops in its tracks. Then that whole line stops in its tracks. And that's why one of the biggest challenges in the Jewish world today is assimilation, because there are whole chunks of the Jewish world where that is not continuing, where parents have not given it over to their children, and where they're not in Jewish day school, so there isn't a transfer. And when there isn't a transfer, it just stops. The line just stops. And so that's why the work which you are doing is holy work, that is keeping the universe going, and that it is keeping the South African Jewish community going, because you are in the direct line of transfer. Of course, the primary responsibility is on a parent. Okay, the parent bears responsibility. That's why actually Rabbi Hirsch says, very interesting thing, that in the Aseret Adibros, why is Kivud Avaim, honoring parents, in the Ten Commandments? Because he says the entire Matan Torah, the entire giving of the Torah, is dependent on that mitzvah of honoring parents. Because where are children going to know about where they come from except from their parents? And if there's no respect and no recognition of parents, then that line stops again. And that's how it is. I'm sure you know that Gemara in Baba Basra, where the Gemara says that there was a time in Jewish history where there was no formal education structures. Everything was homeschooling. And one could even say, if a parent was able to do it in their own home, within that kind of loving environment, there'd be something amazing and special about that it doesn't have to be institutionalized. But they saw it wasn't sustainable, because it meant that, like it said, children who don't have parents, who've lost a parent, where parents are struggling, they're parents who don't have the knowledge, parents who don't have the time, the wherewithal, the emotional wherewithal, where there are many children in the home, and so it became unsustainable. And so what the Gemara recounts is Yoshua ben Gamla, and the Gemara says Zachur Latov, may he be remembered for the good, because what he did was he established the concept of a national education infrastructure, whereby every community was tasked with the responsibility to set up a school. It's one of the primary responsibilities of a Jewish community. You say, what is the responsibility of a Jewish community? When you have a city where Jews are living, you have to have a shul, okay? but you have to have a school. And in fact, I mean, it's brought in the Gemara, and the Rambam says it that and one could even deduce from the Rambam that maybe it's even more serious than a shul. I mean, a shul is important, and of course our shuls are the lifeblood of our community, but schools, without schools you've got nothing. And it says that a community that doesn't have a schooling system to teach its children is deserving of, I think the Rambam even says, a kind of a chayrim, that it's a community that has crossed the line. It's like a red line. It's a red line because there can't be transfer. And that's why the work that you're doing is so important. But why I mention this? Because parents carry the primary responsibility. And that's also the interesting thing. Schools are the outsourced resource to carry out the parents' responsibility. When you're teaching Chumash to the children in your class, you're doing that on behalf of their parents, which means, number one, as parents, we need to be so grateful to the schools, because actually what the schools and what the teachers are doing is what we should be doing. But through Jewish history, we've learned that this has to be institutionalized. So there has to be a tremendous gratitude from parents to schools to say, we're so grateful. But it also means this, is that parents also need to take an interest in the Torah education of their children, to say, what is the standards? What are you learning at school? Share it at the table. What's actually going on? We need to have a sense of, well, this is my job that is being done. So is it being done properly? So, and of course, these things get complicated because the dynamics between parents and schools is always a complicated dynamic. And on the one hand, schools want parents who are real partners and engaged. On the other hand, schools need the space to kind of do their job as professionals. So there is a balance, and ultimately you're the professionals, so you know better. But parents have to care. There has to be a real sense of like, this is my job. And also that means, I think as well, a very important thing is that parents should be encouraged to also learn with their children at home. So there is that sense. It's not completely outsourced. Okay, so maybe 99% can be outsourced, but there should be some learning between parents and children. That in itself is an enormous challenge, because obviously parents have to do it in a way where it's not homework and it's not something which is, which becomes burdensome for the child, and not something that actually ruins their relationship with their child. So it's not an easy thing, and it requires an innovative approach. It's not about like saying, and every child is obviously different. Children have got different interests, and I think this is also where parents, and I think an important role for the school is to give guidance to parents how to learn with their children, because you're the expert educators. So just as a practical idea, to maybe like a list of tips to parents how to learn with your child. To my mind, doing that, the guiding principle would be, Ein adam lomed ela b'makom shelibo chafetz. You only learn where your heart desires, meaning find the thing the child is actually interested. Don't think, what should my child be learning? Let me see what, and every child is different. I've seen with my own children, that one of my children loved Nach, that there was like the sense of, learning I learned with my daughter the Chamesh Megillos, and she just loved Shir Hashirim, and she had like a passion for that. And then one of my sons just loves halacha. So then it's a matter of, I'm not going to mention his name, because if I do, then I will not be forgiven for putting him on camera. But And so what we've done there is created this concept of a halacha a day, which we take kitzur, okay? And it literally takes 2 minutes, sometimes less, but it's something which he's interested in. He's interested in halacha. He needs to know halacha, but he's also interested in it. But he loves that. And so each child loves something different, and one's got to feel, how long can you learn with them? What should you learn with them? And so I think the school has a role to play there, just to empower parents a little bit, which was part of the vision behind Generation Sinai over all the years, was to say to parents, here's a bit of a taste of what it feels like to learn Torah with your child. Don't just outsource it. And to me, this is a very important general theme when it comes to our Torah and to Judaism, is that we shouldn't outsource. And this is part of what we need to train our community, is in the sense of when you come to shul, well, it's not the chazan is davening for me, or the choir is davening for me, or the rabbi's going to learn Torah for me. We all have to own our own Yiddishkeit. It's who we are. We need to have a real feeling like this is mine, and I have a responsibility, and I also have to learn, and I also have to daven, and I also have to be a teacher. And so I know you've got a long list of responsibilities, getting through the curriculum and juggling all of your own home responsibilities and your own children, never mind. But some sort of like a list of tips for parents for how to learn. And as we're talking now, I'm thinking, if we can get this right, maybe it's the outline of some sort of a community project, taking Generation Sinai to something sustainable for people to do on a regular basis, but where it's short and sweet and nice and lovely, but there's that sense of ownership, remembering that Torah learning and teaching is actually the primary responsibilities of the parent. The school is the outsourced resource for that. And also what you see, for example, as a teacher, I mean, I've never taught in the classroom on any sustainable basis. I've popped in and out of classrooms. So I have the utmost admiration for you, because I know it's an incredible skill that it is to hold a classroom. And one of the skills that you learn in that is the skill of asking questions and drawing kids in through questions. And even that skill to teach parents as part of the tips, that when it's for a Dvar Torah, it is start with a question, an open question that can lead to discussion around the table, then introduce the Dvar Torah, instead of saying, I'm here to this week's parasha is, and then it's like a monologue. So those are, I think, because you guys have got the skills. And I think sometimes when you've got skills and you know how to do it, and you've done it for many years and you do it so well, you can forget that for ordinary people like us, it's like a whole, you don't know these things. So you need to, if someone doesn't teach you how to do it. So I think that's an important thing. It's part of like the Mishnah Pirkei Avos V'Hamidu Talmidim Harbe, which make many students, which the Tiferet Yisrael says doesn't only apply to teachers, it applies to every Jew. That there's a mitzvah to teach Torah to as many people as you can, and that primarily starts at home. But again, it's within the integrity of knowledge of what you know and what you don't know. But it's that mindset shift. I'm also a teacher. I can do something with the humility of knowing I am a teacher, but I'm an amateur teacher. I'm not a professional. Otherwise, they're going to think they can do your job better than you. But so there is that fine line. But I think it's an important thing. I was thinking to myself, what is one of the keys to education? And I tell you what I've learned over the years, and you can tell me what you think. But to me, it sums up in this Mishnah Pirkei Avos in Perek Revi'i, in the 4th chapter of Pirkei Avos, Mishnah Tes Vav, where Reb Lazar ben Shamua Omer, he says like this: Yehi kvoid talmidcha chaviv alecha keshela. Let the honor, the respect, the dignity of your student be as dear to you as your own kavod. Ukavod chavercha kamoy rabach, and the honor of your colleague should be like your teacher, like with the awe of your teacher. And your awe of heaven, your awe of your teacher should be like the awe of heaven. So what I think is so powerful about this is that it's the concept of kavod, of respect. And notice how the Mishnah is starting with respect due to a student. It's not because now, to me, that is, the heart and soul of what leadership is about. Because I'm like applying. I'm saying, as I said, you guys are the experts. You're in the classrooms. I'm not. But I've done a fair amount of teaching in over the years, and I've, in less formal setups, and what I've learned as chief rabbi over all these years is that leadership starts with respecting the people that you're engaging with. And they will know whether you are respecting them or whether there's a sense of, I'm the master of the universe, I have all the knowledge, you are the ignorant. And that kind of an attitude of superiority is felt immediately by the students, by a community. So to me, the heart and soul of leadership is equality. We're all in this together. We've got different roles within that, for sure. A person who's got an official leadership role has got certain responsibilities that another person doesn't have. But we're all partners in building Am Yisrael. And it may be that as a teacher, you've got years of Torah knowledge and years of skills in imparting it, and these children don't know anything, or they know little, especially if you're teaching in grade 1 and grade 2. It's really at the start of it. And even as they get more advanced, but relative to you, they know much, much less than you. But the sense of respect, and where does that sense of respect come from? The Maharal says, fascinating thing on this Mishnah. He says it is about reframing who's teaching who. And you know that famous Gemara about, Rebbe, who said that I learned a lot from my teachers, even more from my colleagues and the most from my students. So what the Maharal says is that what this Mishnah represents is the fact that learning is not a one-way street. It is a dynamic. When you're teaching in class, your students are teaching you, and you have a lot to learn from them because they've got a fresh way of looking at things. They're bright, they're curious, they are probing, and even at times when they're not, their disengagement from it, that very challenge of finding the thing in the content that's going to engage a student, that in itself, they've taught you something that you didn't see before because you had to dig deep in order to find it. But it's coming into the class saying, I'm not just a teacher, I'm also a student. You see, this is like the opposite dynamic with parents. It's part of what we were saying before is that if we want a dynamic community, we need to train everyone to think I'm a teacher. Okay, but then part of it is saying we need to train ourselves as teachers to think I'm a student as well. And that, that's part of that is the humility of it. It's about the thirst for continued knowledge. It is the amazing thing that if you think, what is the highest accolade that one can use to describe a Torah scholar, is a Talmid Chacham, a student of the wise. In other words, we remain students our whole life. And the moment that we no longer students is when we stop growing and we stop developing. So it's like, and that other Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which, the famous one, Eizehu Chacham, Alomid Mikol Adam, a person who learns from all, and Eizehu Mechubad, who's a person who has honor and dignity, and Mechabed is a person who gives that to others. It's about inverting the whole way of thinking. I'm not coming into the class to teach, I'm coming into the class to learn, and this classroom full of children are my teachers. That's going to change the dynamic in the room completely, because now there is a community of learners. There's a community of learners. It is not didactic, and it's not top down. It is this incredible space of learning where everyone is bringing something fresh, and you bringing your knowledge and your expertise, and that's a tremendous thing. They bringing their freshness. The very thing that as teachers we lack, which is, we know this content so well, that is our greatest advantage, but our greatest disadvantage as well. Because Torah has to be fresh, it has to be new. That's why that I command you today, it needs to feel like it's fresh. And how do you walk into class and teach the same parasha that you've been teaching for 5 years, for 10 years, and still feel fresh about it? I think part of that, well, you'll know better than me because you guys are doing it every day. But part of that is, is your Talmidim. No class is the same as the year before, right? And no student in that class is the same as the one next to them. But that sense of respect, I'm grateful to you because actually I'm looking at Parshas Bereshis with new eyes now because of you, and thank you for that. That conveying that to a child, deep respect, And to me, that's part of nurturing love in a child for Yiddishkeit, is they have to feel, and I think this is like an important parenting concept as well, valued. If they feel my only value is in receiving information that you're giving me, I'm just like the machine to process it, then they don't feel valued. They feel undermined. They feel, okay, well, I'm just here. You just bringing me the information. But they need to feel. They need to truly feel valued. And I think that's something which is so special. And that's why in this, what's so beautiful about this mission is you see there are these three kind of learning relationships. There is, parent to, there is the teacher to student. There is the colleagues, and then there is student to teacher. So those are three different relationships, but they all are interconnected. And you actually see the one is connected to the other. Let the honor of your Talmud be like yours. Let the honor of your friend be like your teacher. So it's all of it comes back to Hashem, because Hashem is the Melech HaKavod. He's the source of all kavod. And so I think an important, the respect then connects to the other thing, is the concept of getting across to children that we're growing all the time. But if they see you growing, that you're genuinely curious to know what they say, then they will learn that learning is not a destination, it's a journey. Ultimately, you want to give them a love and an inspiration to want to continue learning themselves. The real test of school is the day they walk out of matric, are they continuing to learn Torah or not? That ultimately, because then that says, listen, this is part of my life. I was talking to the grade 12s at Herzliya just 2 weeks ago, a week or two ago, and I was saying to them, it's fine, your maths, science, whatever, you come to the end of matric. If you're not taking that in university, that's it. You leave it behind. But Torah is not a subject. It's our life. And I think, and that's what I was discussing with them, and it really resonated, this concept. What I said to them, and I think it's something to instill in the children, and one way to do it is in holiday time. Okay, it's challenging this, okay, and I know this as a parent, it's so challenging, and I'm not going to say, okay, here's a whole sort of easy ways to get children to learn in the holidays, to get them to learn after they've left school, etc. But what the point is the concept of kavata itim Torah. You're learning Torah every single day of your life. That's what a Jew does. That's kind of the ethic that we need to instill, and the value we need to instill in our community. The sense is that every Jew learns Torah every day. That a day doesn't go by without us learning Torah. Some new idea in Torah, something new, something fresh, a new pasuk, a new mishnah, something. It can't go by without that. Because that is life. It's like, it's without, and to view it though at the same time not as a chore. This is the thing. If we say, listen, no, you have to learn every day, then it's a chore. And then is it a chore on the to-do list that you have to tick off? You've got your whole list of to-dos, and then at the end of the day, after all of that, you also got to learn. And so now you've got to learn the daf, you've got to learn your halacha, you've got to. It's like if it becomes a chore, then it's also not it's actually the thing that helps you carry everything else. And what I've found over the years, like people have often asked me, and I mentioned this there to the kids at Herzliya, I was saying, people have often asked me, like, how have I stayed sane in this job for almost 18 years, right? And it's a good question. So. Definitely for me, I feel like our children, it has been for me, our kids and interacting with them at home and knowing that like their supper time and bedtime and everything, that is like the greatest form of therapy for the day that there is. It's just like, it's pure joy, and a sense where even if it's hard work, there's something profoundly comforting in the purity of a child and dealing with where they're at. So that's part of it. Shabbos, for sure, that's the key to survival of anything, and learning Torah every day. I set aside time to learn. I'm not going to, say how much, but it's significant time, and for me, I don't feel like it is a sense of, well, this is what I have to do. Obviously, as a rabbi, I have to be learning Torah. If you're not learning Torah, then how can you be a rabbi? How can you be a Jew? But certainly, with putting aside, as a rabbi, significant time to learn Torah. That's like the beginnings and the basics of it. But it's not a duty and a job. It is actually the thing that helps me carry everything else. Because when you, and I think this is an important thing to convey to children, the sense that the joy of learning is actually the joy that helps you carry everything else. That it like lifts you. It lifts you because now you see things from Hashem's perspective. You see the joy. You see the inspiration of it, and it's a challenge. It's not simple, but we have to set that as a goal. And it is, and that will be what will stand them instead afterwards, where there's that sense of this is actually, it's not like another chore of my list of to-dos for the day. It's the thing that lifts everything else, and that lifts me and gives me comfort and clarity and strength and inspiration, and also like a way of not have of going into a world which is filled with Hashem's ideas, which are so beautiful. What can be more beautiful than that? And then when you go back to all of the problems and challenges of life after that, then somehow the edge is taken off, because you just saw the bigger picture. And I think it's also about, in a way, it's not like, well, there's a program or a device. I think it's also about speaking about this, reminding this is the value. Torah, and a simple way to do it is in the morning brachas before learning Torah is Vaharevna, make the words of Torah sweet in our mouths. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky actually says, from there he learns a halacha that enjoying your learning is actually a part of the mitzvah itself. Okay, it's actually because the Gemara when it's looking to define the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, and it says, is it to light the candles or to place the candles? It learns that it's to light the candles because the bracha says lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah. So Rabbi Yaakov brings from there that you can deduce the halachic definition of a mitzvah from the formulation of the blessing. So therefore, he says, if the blessing for learning Torah is vaharevna, make the words of Torah sweet in our mouths, then it goes to the heart and soul of the experience. And so, what I would say to you as educators, your role is to give the children the tools. They have to have the tools. They have to be able to read a Chumash, read the Hebrew, know how to open up a Siddur, learn a Mishnah, all of these things, all of the incredible sources of our people that come from Hashem. But it has to be with sweetness. Vaharevna, and notice the language in the blessing. Vaharevna Hashem Elokeinu, divrei torascha befinu, right? And then it goes on to say, V'nia nachnu v'tzeitze'enu, v'tzeitze'ei amcha beis Yisrael, that it will go to us and to our offspring and to their children after that. Why is that in the blessing where it mentions Vaharevna? Because the only way for Torah to go from one generation to the next is if it's sweet, where there's joy in it. It's like what Rav Moshe Feinstein says, that first generation that arrived in America from Europe. And no one's judging because, the kind of world that they fled. But he said that there was that Yiddish expression at Shvertzer Zayne Yid, it's hard to be a Jew. He said that broke a generation because when the generation heard, it's hard to be a Jew, well then maybe why should I want it? It's too hard. It has to be sweet. And the sweetness is in the learning of Torah. So that of course is the huge challenge in a schooling environment, because the children are there, they didn't volunteer. They have to be in school. Okay?
Incentives become a biggie.
Huh?
The incentives become a biggie.
Yeah.
Startup.
And food treats, and they're like, you gotta.
Yeah.
Maybe just the Mike and Ike's, honey.
Yeah.
Always Mike and I.
Yeah, but they're there. They're in an institution. They have to come, and that's why it's in a way it's a sort of where we started our discussion today. I was saying is Phyllis, Jowell's a happy place. So you've done that right. It's happy, even though they have to be there. Okay, but yet that's the challenge of great education. is to empower with the tools, but in a way that the students love it. And I think that's connected to respect. If you really respect them and be as a fellow learner with them on this learning journey, and a school is not just a place of transmission of information, it's a learning society, then there's something magnificent about that, but in a way where it's done with sweetness and enjoyment. And I think those are also part of what we need to empower ourselves as parents and to share it with the parents of the school. How can parents also view themselves as not teaching their children but learning from their children, creating families which are mutual learning environments, where if a child says something, a parent is not just kind of waiting impatiently for them to finish so they can finish the Dvar Torah, but rather to say, actually, what do you have to say? I'm interested. I really want to know what you have to say. Do we have a real learning environment here? A chavrusa, exactly. I think, and maybe it's a good note to end on, in a sense that's Hashem is the ultimate parent and the ultimate teacher. He holds us. That's what we want. That's what we need to give out to our children and to our students, the sense of being held. And for me, it's so beautiful. Like the name of Hashem that expresses that Hamakom, right? The place, because that's what the Midrash says that the world is not the place of Hashem. Hashem is the place of the world. He holds it. And think about the name of Hashem that is used in the Haggadah before introducing the discussion with the children. Baruch HaMakom Baruchu, Baruch Shenasan Torah Lamo Yisrael, Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. That's how the Haggadah introduces the discussion with the four children. It's Hashem as HaMakom. And it's like, I think there's a parenting and a teaching lesson in that. You have to be the place that holds it, modeling ourselves on Hashem. But a place gives space for people to grow and to flourish in it. The place, it holds, but it doesn't dominate. And I think that's this like fine skill of great parenting and great teaching, which is like a lifetime of work to get it right. But it's a way to hold your family, hold your children, hold your students, but give them space to flourish and believing in them and giving them the cover and the respect. Okay, I've loved this opportunity and this chance to talk about such important things and with experts. So great. Thank you so much. Enjoy your trip, hey, for the rest of the time here in Joburg.